In a relationship, when is honesty not the best policy? How do you balance what you want versus what you need? And is there something you need to say to your spouse but can't find the right way to say it? If so, then you're in the right place. This is the Lunch with Sandy podcast. With nearly 20 years of marriage under their belts, Terrance and Sandy Jackson discuss a range of topics, provide valuable insights on relationships, and talk about the conversations married couples need to have. So what does lunch have to do with all of this? Well, it's a metaphor for how these conversations originally started. Speaking of conversations, let's get one going. Here's your hosts, Terrance and Sandy.
Hello and welcome to the Lunch with Sandy podcast. I'm Terrance.
And I'm Sandy.
And as usual here on the Lunch with Sandy podcast, we are having the conversations that married couples need to have. And I know that I say that every week, but you do not have to be married to gain insight from these conversations that we are having. And today we're going to be talking about everyday acrobats. No, we're not going to the circus. But before we get into that, let's get some formalities out of the way. I start every show by asking my wife, Sandy, how she's doing. And today's going to be no different as I stumble over everything that I just said. So, Sandy, let me get back in the groove and say, how are you doing today?
Well, per Erlin, I cannot say I'm tired. So
shout out to Erlin. That's right. Get it straight.
I will say I'm itchy.
Oh, goodness. Erlin Sanchez, when you listen to this, you'll understand the pain that I go through when I have these sessions with Sandy. She's not tired today. She's itchy. Yes. I would ask her to elaborate, but I don't think we want to get into that.
No, I'll elaborate. It's not that. It's not bad. It's just I'm so highly allergic to poison ivy that went for a bike ride. They were cutting vegetation along the side of the road.
I like how you said vegetation.
Well, I don't,
they were cutting grass.
No,
weeds.
It was more weeds than anything. It's definitely not grass. Hence, I use the word vegetation.
They were doing some landscaping.
And there must have been poison ivy. It got in the wind. Must have landed on me somehow.
You know what the moral of the story is?
And hence I have like little spots of poison ivy like on my wrists, my ankles. And I'm like, what the heck? I didn't even go near it this time. Like, when I go near it and I touch it and you yell at me, but I know that it was self-inflicted.
Now, listen.
This time it's not even self-inflicted.
You need to expand on the whole I yell at you situation because that's not how it happens. What happens is you continuously go play in the woods, and I did say play in the woods when you know there's poison ivy. You get poison ivy, and then you say...
You say, why do you mess with it if you know you're allergic
Exactly. Why do you keep going to play in the woods? You're not a little kid anymore. Stop going to play in the woods.
Goats to eat it.
Anyway, before we get too sidetracked with her poison ivy story...
Hey.
Let me get us back on track and get into my spotlight of the week so we can get into this episode. My spotlight of the week is not a person. It is basically, I guess you can call it a thing, and it's acts of kindness. And let me be a bit more specific. We had the ride on Monday, rode through Tiverton, beautiful ride, and Jose got a flat. And as he's sitting there fixing the flat, me, him, Serge, Yaz, we're sitting there, he's sitting flat, and a woman pulls up and she stops and she asks if we need any help, which was phenomenal because most of the time when we're riding and someone pulls up or drives by, they speed up, they blow the horn, they shake their fist like they're 105 years old. But this woman did none of those things. She stopped, she asked if we needed help, which was very appreciative. And it reminded me of the ride that we did last year at Martha's Vineyard, where Court didn't get a flat, but he was kind of gassed out, and a woman actually offered him a ride and picked him up and gave him a ride back to the place where we had to catch the ferry. So
yes,
that's my spotlight of the week. To all those people out there showing acts of kindness, we appreciate you.
And we don't appreciate the ones that are beeping.
I don't pay them much mind. I mean, listen, they got to get something off their chest, get it off their chest.
That happened to us on Monday. I waved to the person as they beeped driving by.
It better have been a proper wave, too.
It was like a parade.
That's the princess wave. You got to make sure you get the elbow and the wrist correct. All right. So, as I said, we're going to talk about acrobats today, and not in the sense of the circus ones. A long time ago, Nationwide used to have these commercials, and I love these commercials. And the commercials always said, or the line of the commercial was, life comes at you fast. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I love those commercials because, it would start with something small, right? Like, let's say, for instance, someone having a baby. And then in the next 3 minutes, they go through the entire life of that baby where, you got to pay for sports, college, wedding, and all that short span. And the idea of it is, things that are unexpected can happen quickly. And those things can be good or bad. And so that's that whole premise. Life comes at you fast. In relationships and marriages, you're not exempt to those things happening, those unexpected things. No. And a lot of times when they happen, you have to be nimble. You have to bend over backwards. You have to walk that tightrope. You have to be an acrobat in a sense so you can get through and deal with all of those everyday things. And hence the term everyday acrobat, right?
Yeah, I'm flexible. I do yoga.
Yeah, we're not talking about that type of flexibility. The short of it is when you're in a relationship, marriage, what have you, there are many things that you're going to have to juggle.
Yes.
And one of the biggest things we just recently talked about, and that was having kids.
Yeah. Kids ruin everything.
I wasn't going to say kids ruin everything. When
working kids ruins everything. When it takes the fun out of life. No.
You're moving along. We're going to get back on track here because I don't know what her problem is with kids. It may have something to do with I was just texting my daughter, and she was getting on my last nerve. And if you're listening to this, Shayna, look, sometimes you just got to let me be because you don't know how good you got it. But anyway, I digress and I get back on topic. You're going along in your relationship and everything's beautiful. You're having all of these wonderful times together. You got all these plans and boom.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, you have a kid.
Yeah. A lot of responsibility.
There's a lot of responsibility that comes along with that. Now your life has this new piece that you now have to fit into your life.
Yeah. They don't feed themselves. They don't clean themselves. You have to figure out how to get all this new stuff done.
Yes. And as everything happens, they grow and then they start doing activities. And so now you got to account for not just you going to work, you keeping the house up, you got to get them to school. And now there's all these activities. So there's a lot that comes along with having children that you now have to fit into your schedule or your life.
Yeah.
And sometimes it causes you to do somersaults. Sometimes it causes you to, like I said, walk that tightrope. And sometimes it causes you to bend over backwards to make sure that you can get them to all the things that you need to get them to.
Yeah. It's frowned upon to just lock them in closets.
Yep. We're going to get right off that because I don't know what was in that Yeti cup that she drank or she's drinking, but I don't like where it's going.
No, I mean, like, it's a big change, and the more you have, the more, I would say, the bigger it is to try to fit it into the schedule. I feel like with one child, sometimes it's easy, kind of get them ready, take them with you wherever you go. But then even when you're on to kid number 2, now it's double the work. It's not as easy to get them all out of the house. And then, to your point, they grow up. Now they're doing different activities.
Yeah.
So on, these days you got to go do that. And on those days you got to do something for the other one. And it's definitely a juggling act.
Yeah. And that's not the only thing that you got to juggle.
No.
You got to remember, you got to get up, you got to go to work.
Yeah.
You have a career. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, some people will call it a career. Some people will call it a slow death.
Right.
And some people call it work. So now on top of all the stuff that you have to do, when you're talking about your everyday stuff from a relationship perspective, from, a parent, a child rearing perspective, now you got this thing that is called work that you got to get up and you got to fit into your actual schedule. And that's just one more thing that you actually have to put into your act. And if you don't put it in your act, that circus is going to get out of control.
Yeah, for sure. They did a study. I don't remember what country, but they gave people the opportunity to work their 40 hours, but they got to choose their own schedule. And apparently, people were much happier. And that's probably why, especially because they were able to alter their schedule based on the needs of whatever other needs that they might have, such as family.
Oh, yeah.
Some people were doing long 4 days. Others were doing, mornings and then later on in the evening. So for all those employers who, get to say and allow flexibility, you might want to look into that study.
I can see how that would make it easier based off your schedule. We're not going to get into the whole you shouting out, telling employers what to do. That's not what this episode is about. I hear what you're saying.
As you're going through the acrobats, think about everything that we do have to do. So you already knocked off the biggest one. Kids, if you have any, right? Work is obviously, we spend more time at work than we do anywhere else. So that's obviously the biggest nugget. But then, even thinking about yourself, taking care of yourself. When do you have time for that?
Well, you got to fit in your physical and mental health into that whole juggling act, because if you don't do that, then it's going to be very difficult for you to actually deal with those other things. So that is a very important aspect of it, and it's not one that you can overlook. I will make one correction. You said that you spend more time at work than you do anywhere else. You might spend more time with those people, but I'm only at work 7-8 hours. I don't know where you're going.
Your waking hours, you're there Monday through Friday.
No, that's what I said.
Most people are 40 hours a week.
I said with those individuals.
Yes. Well, if you're with those individuals, you're.
Well, the point of the matter is you're awake much more than just 8 hours, right?
Yeah.
So I mentioned this earlier too. Part of that aspect of juggling has to do with the things that you have to do when you're not at work and you're at home. Those aspects that you got to get done around the house, whether it be cleaning the house, whether it be, cutting the grass, cooking, whether it's, even just taking care of the finances and making sure that all the stuff that you need to have done from the perspective of making sure the home is going to function is one of those other things that you actually have to make sure that you fit in there also.
Yeah. Otherwise, things at home can get a little chaotic. You got to eat, first of all. I don't know many people who can, afford a personal chef to take care of all that. Because it's not just the cooking. It's the shopping for the food. It's the figuring out what you're going to eat. It's the cooking. It's the actual eating.
Yeah.
There's a lot of layers to that.
Oh yeah, no,
Even
definitely.
it's such a simple act.
Well, and I wouldn't even say it's a simple act. I think, it can be underestimated how many things that you have to accomplish when it comes to taking care of your home life. There's a lot that actually falls into to that category that, if it doesn't get done the proper way or in a timely fashion, then that whole thing just falls apart. And then what do you got? You're outside playing in the woods, getting poison ivy all the time. The other thing is, it's the other thing that, you have to make sure that you keep a handle on too, is all those relationships that exist outside the actual house.
Yeah.
Whether it be.
There can be quite a bit.
Oh, well, yeah.
Depending.
Depending on who you are, there could be quite a bit. Family could be a big aspect of that. And there's always, I'm trying to find the correct term. There's always a certain situational awareness that you have to have when you're talking about those relationships when it pertains to family. I'm not going to use the word drama because not everybody has drama when they're dealing with their family. Some people do, some people don't.
No, and we're called the sandwich generation right now, right? We're taking care of our own kids, and then we're also.
I thought you was hungry for a second.
No, we already ate. We're also taking care of our parents in some regards as well. So you're gonna trying to manage both, your children and your parent, and especially as your parent ages.
Yeah,
some of them get sick. It can be more stressful.
Yeah, I'm not going to sidebar too much, but I do find it interesting. You said that they call us the sandwich generation. I would ask which generations aren't the sandwich generations, because for the most part, in some cultures and a lot of cultures, that's what happens. Your parent takes care of you, and as they get older, you take care of them. And if you have any kids, I mean, they're thrown in the mix.
Well, I feel like a lot of people are having children later in life.
Yeah, that's true. Lately. I think that's true.
So hence there's more opportunity for the sandwich generation when you're taking care of both, where I think before it was, you have your own children pretty early on. So you're not raising them by the time that your parents start to age, and you need to help out there as well.
Yeah, so
that's my assumption.
Well, no, because
we're called the sandwich
I'm going to try to summarize that a little bit. So if they're having kids later, what's happening is they're waiting for the parents to die off before they actually have the kids, so they only have to take care of the actual kids.
Nice.
I digress. So the question that has to be asked now is, okay, so you're juggling all this stuff, and at the same time while you're juggling, you're walking this tightrope. I can't speak today at all. It probably has to do with that peanut butter, and Hershey bar that I just had that Jax was watering. His mouth was watering over. So you're doing all of this stuff. Mm-hmm. How do you maintain the balance so the circus doesn't get out of control?
Good question. When somebody figures out the answer, let us know.
There's some. She's taking the short route out. She's taking the short route out.
I'm kidding. Honestly, I feel like for me personally, my calendar is like my lifesaver. Like, I don't make any plans without looking at my calendar first.
And you know what? The funny thing about that is this. You put everything in the calendar.
I do.
And sometimes you miss something.
Oh, yeah. Oftentimes
I don't get that.
Well, because sometimes on the weekend I don't bother checking it because it's the weekend.
What's the point? You put a lot of stuff in there for the weekend, too.
I know. But usually, if I'm missing something, it's usually not an event we need to actually go to. So maybe it's somebody's birthday that I forgot about because they're not having a party. But if it's a birthday party
I see how
on the weekend,
she don't care about you unless you having a party. That's what it sounds like.
No, just on the weekends. It's it's to your point. It's a lot of acrobatics on the weekend.
It is. There are a lot of acrobatics, and using the calendar. Scheduling is huge. Scheduling will do a lot to help you try to maintain that balance, not just for the task, but for yourselves also. I mean, you have to make sure that, we talked about juggling, your health and things like that. You got to make time for yourself so you can do all those acrobatics, but then get yourself back into shape. So when it comes time to flip again, you're ready.
Well, time flows oddly as you get older, we'll say.
I thought you were going to say differently for you because I was going to say, yeah, I agree.
Well, that too. But no, I'll talk to someone and it'll be like, oh, we should get together for dinner, right? And then snap of fingers and it's 2 weeks later and you're like, oh, we never planned dinner, you know? So that's why, at least for me, scheduling is very important because, if it's in the calendar, it will definitely get done. So it's more of the conversation now that I have of let's get something in the calendar. Then.
Yeah. I need to take a page out of your book with that because there are a couple people, particularly one person in it specifically, that I said, listen, when I get back from vacation, let's get together and have a drink. And it's been we've been back for 2 weeks, probably going on 3.
Back a month.
Oh, well, time flows differently when you get older. She said it, and I need to reach out. I need to reach out to Jason and schedule that drink and make sure that we get together. So yeah, I need to get that done. The other thing that will help keep that balance is delegating, right? So yes. You're not alone when it comes to some of this stuff. And I think that there are some people who try to tackle everything on their own. And when you're juggling all of these different pieces and you take on too much, you're going to drop something. Yeah.
Well, I think, I don't know, just naturally you and I worked out who does what around the house.
I mean, it works out. I don't know.
I mean, it's not like we ever sat down and have a conversation like, okay, you do this, and I'll do this, Maybe some people need to have those conversations. I think for us, we just kind of naturally worked it out. And if we had concerns, we just expressed them and then we worked them out. Yeah. But maybe for some people, they actually need to go through the list and figure out who needs to do what.
Yeah, I think organically it worked out for us. But I do think that people have to sometimes have that conversation, because if you have that personality where you take on everything and you take it on because you feel that, well, you can feel a couple of ways. One, that, you're the only one who can get it done right. Or, you just feel like, okay, well, because this person's not doing this, I'm going to do it. Yeah. It might not be a situation where the person doesn't want to do it. It's just that the person might not be cognizant of the fact that, hey, listen, it's not that you're doing it because you enjoy doing it so much. It's just that, your personality trait brings you to a point where you want to get stuff done. So if you can have that conversation and start delegating, again, it makes it much easier to deal with all those other tasks and all those other things that you need to put a focus on and keep up in the air. Yes. In order to get by.
You know me, I'm a major data person. So sometimes it looks a little different once you write it down.
Oh, goodness.
Well, I mean, it's an accurate statement. Like,
I tell you what,
thoughts is not quite the same of actually putting it down.
I tell you what, if you write down, take out the trash, it ain't gonna look no different than when you go out there taking out. Oh, you mean like a list?
Like a list.
Yeah. All right. You gotta get more specific. Yeah.
What you're currently doing, here's what I'm currently doing. Like, okay. Is there an imbalance? Do we need to
so there's a challenge. Out, there's a challenge with the list, because you can look at the list and someone can say, hey, listen, I'm doing more than what you're doing. And the other person can say, well, I'm doing this and this takes much more. I get what you're saying.
And then, like we talk about having kids and then they grow up, you got to give those kids.
And listen, I'm going to tell y'all something right now. I gotta say this. Kids are beautiful. Sandy's been talking about them during this episode.
No, kids are beautiful, but I mean, as they get older, you need to start giving them
100%, 100%. I'm taking the opportunity to go back to wipe the slate clean.
I'm sure there are kids out there that don't have responsibilities.
There's some kids out there that you don't want to have responsibilities.
Yeah, we probably are a little bit more lax on Ayla. She doesn't do as much.
Well, yeah.
But I mean, that's a major part of
we're
delegation.
We're also at a different point in our lives, and we handle things differently. And when we need her to do something, we tell her to actually do it.
There's also great technologies that are out there now that weren't out there with the older girls. You're
talking about your little Roomba robot?
Yes.
Oh, goodness.
Even when cooking dinner, you get the rice cooker.
Oh, that's true.
You got that.
That rice cooker is a lifesaver. I still haven't made a cheesecake in it yet.
There's a lot of things that are no longer needed to be done manually. You have some form of automation.
Yeah. Yeah, so basically what Sandy is saying is delegate some of that stuff to the rice cooker, to the Roomba. You got to delegate that stuff to some of these new technologies that can take some of the stuff off your plate and make it easier for you to actually juggle. Don't juggle the technologies, because if they fall and break, now you got more work you got to actually do.
But no, that is part of delegation.
It's true. Listen, hey, I'm laughing, but the truth is that is part of you. delegate some stuff to the Roomba.
I love putting food in the slow cooker and then get home from work and it's all done. Like, right?
Who would have thought?
I could do that more often. I need to figure out some more meals. I'm willing to delegate to that slow cooker most days of the week.
So this is going to be interesting because you know what? We're gonna actually have this. I think I'm going to spin this off to a topic. With all these different technologies that you're delegating to, do you lose something from the perspective of what you're capable of doing? That's a different topic, and I say that because I texted Anthony in court yesterday, and I was basically texting them, showing them the tomatoes and the cucumbers, and court said, court always has some funny comment. And I basically replied saying, listen, I'm getting ready. So when the apocalypse comes, I know I'm going to be able to provide some food for myself. So we're going to spin that off with the whole using the technology for some of these things because it's great. But at the same time, what's the cost? Yeah. Because if you can't use that rice cooker and you don't know how to make no rice, I don't know. I might not be able to rock with you.
I'll caveat by saying I still know how to make rice.
Well, no, I'm not talking about
you. Do get used to the technologies like backup cameras.
Yeah, exactly.
Things
Which
like that.
I tend not to use.
But absolutely.
So back to the juggling of the non-technology stuff. I think it's important when we talk about making sure you can find a balance while you're juggling all of this stuff is knowing your limits.
Yeah.
And I mean, that plays a little bit into the delegation piece. But the challenge is when you don't know your limits, again, and you're juggling too many things, it's going to be very difficult for you. And chances are something's going to get dropped. And if it's something important, that can have a profound impact on you and those around you. Yeah,
I struggle personally with this one because I try to do a lot and I try to do everything. So whatever people invite me to, I try to go to. And sometimes there is too much juggling and it does become overwhelming.
Yeah, you got to take a page out of my book. One, I agree. I think sometimes you're overstretched. But two, you ask me sometimes, are you going this? I just say, no, I'm not. I'm not. I think, going back to making sure that you take care of yourself physically and mentally, I think that knowing your limits allows you to say, hey, I need a break. And if I stuff any more into this bag or if I put one more ball in the air, it's not going to work out for me. I'm going to be at the point where I may crack or something else that I need to focus on is not going to get the focus that's necessary.
Yeah.
So knowing your limits is very important. And listen, I know my limits. I know when I'm getting to a point where I'm going to break, whether it be professionally, personally. But knowing that allows me to say, hey, listen, all right, I can't put too much more on my plate right now because if I do, it's going to drop.
No, you're right. And something I've been definitely working at this year, and I think it's gotten better. Like, our weekends sometimes get really full. So now it's one or the other. Either we got something going on one day over the weekend or we got something going on the other. But I'm trying to stay away from both.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you that question. How do our weekends get full? You put stuff on my calendar.
I can't help it that you're a hermit. Just kidding.
That I'm what?
A hermit.
Yeah, I'm not a hermit. I'm out first off, Saturdays, I'm always working around the house. Sundays, I'm out with the crew. There's no hermit. I just have other things that I have to do that I can't be all over gallivanting all the time.
But we do have a big family. We have friends, and usually we get invited to things. So,
oh no, that's cool. Like I said, I just know my limits. There's certain things that have to get done that you have to take care of all those balls that you're juggling in the air before you try to throw any more in there.
That's why I said, that's something I got better at this year.
Yeah.
How many weekends have we had it where we've had things going on same day or same weekend? Tried to avoid that this year.
I always got something going on a weekend. Anyway, I
meant.
Yeah, I know what you meant. The other part about that too is knowing your resources. And by that, what I mean is, this also goes along with delegation. Understand that you have help. And whether that help be, listen, you got a teenager upstairs who can do some stuff, or you have a family member, you mentioned family, that might be able to assist you with some things. And just knowing who those people are and that you have the capacity or the ability to reach out to them, that'll help you maintain the balance. For a while, remember when the girls were young, we had to rely on family members at times to help us get through some of the things we needed to get through.
No, definitely. Fortunately, we had a good support system at the time. And to be honest, those resources sometimes is just paying out the cash to have somebody else do it.
Wait, listen, 100%. And listen, I'm so glad you said that, because, there are certain things where now I'm like, listen, I ain't doing that.
Yeah.
I don't have the time to do it. It's either I go to work or either I do this or I can't do both. So if we need to have it done, you got to pay somebody to do it.
Yeah. Sometimes taking something that's going to take you a week, I should say, to do versus just paying somebody and they're going to bang it out in a day.
And you have to be able to put a reasonable value on your time, because the time you spend doing something that you can pay someone to do might not directly seem like it matches up from a dollar perspective. But when you look at all the other aspects that you cannot take on or be involved in while you're doing that, it starts to add up.
Yeah, no, for sure. And sometimes it's just worth it. Sometimes it takes a hit on the account and you're like, I don't like that number. But at the end of the day, it's well worth it.
Yeah, true. So in summary, when Nationwide said life comes at you fast, they really meant it. There are so many things that you eventually have to juggle when they come up. And although the juggling process can get a little dicey, when you get enough experience with the flipping and the walking the tightrope and the bending over backwards, they call that back bend, you learn some tips to actually help you get through those easier.
Yep.
That whole delegation, knowing your limits, making sure that, you take advantage of those resources. If you can do those things, then you'll be a professional juggler.
Yep.
And you will have that title of expert acrobat, and then you can go join the circus. Doesn't that sound lovely? Let's all become expert acrobats and go join the circus so we can juggle and get through these things that we need to get through. Now, we're at the end of the show, and so it's time for my realization of the week. And I've noticed that as of late, some of the realizations have been trending towards the negative side. So I'm going to switch it up because, I'm a very positive person. So my realization of the week is this. If you want to get better at something, or if you want to be the best at something, you got to surround yourself with those individuals who are strong in that area. They say steel sharpens steel, iron sharpens iron. And that just basically means that you grow stronger when you surround yourselves with those who are actually strong. So keep that in mind when you're trying to reach the pinnacle of something. Don't be afraid to surround yourself with individuals who are just as strong, or if not stronger than you are. Thank you for actually listening. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast. And remember to join us next week for another conversation.
That's it for this week's episode of the Lunch with Sandy podcast. Thanks for listening. We'd love to hear your feedback and comments on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter at Lunch with Sandy. And be sure to follow us on your favorite podcast app. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to rate and review us. Thanks again for listening to the Lunch with Sandy podcast.